Hey, welcome back, Visions fan. It's been a little while, but I'm here for the Black Rose Helena character review. Finally, I actually wanted to wait on this because although I was releasing the reviews prior to the characters being released, just looking at their skill set and their stats and whatnot, there's a really critical, important piece that I was underrating that I shouldn't have, and she's the exact reason why I shouldn't. The AI is very unique to every single hero, so looking only at their stats and their class and their skills is totally not the way to do things, and I'm glad I didn't do it this time because she actually is very disappointing to me for the AI reasons that I was not aware of prior to actually seeing her work in games. So stay tuned for what that reason is. It's going to come up when I talk about the classes and the skills overall. So Black Rose Elena, she's a interesting new addition, but for how I do these character breakdowns, it's going to be the overview, my general thoughts, and I'm going to do a high-end sample build just to show some stats, character statistics in terms of accuracy and evasion, class and job overview where I talk about the jobs and how they fit together, what skills you want on or off, and whether they round out the character well, and then finally esper, vision card, and weapon synergies. I'm going to spend a little less time on that than normal just because that changes so often now that I don't think it's a good investment to spend a ton of time because there is a lot of options and really unique to what you have and what the meta is and what the guild war is and what content you're using it for. So that being said, the character review, she's a brand new dark element unit. The job they created Black Robed Witch for her, which is a really interesting class, but Spellblade and Arithmetician of the other two. The weapon is a staff or a rod used interchangeably in the game, and then the equips of hat, cloth, and accessory with a move of 3 and a jump of 1. So really straightforward there in terms of what you'd expect from a mage. Really nothing too incredible about the kit overall. I thought this kit would actually be more interesting than it is, and we're going to get into why in just a minute here, and why I'm so disappointed in this character. So the overview itself, I do like her resistances here, that she innately has slash and magic resistances because they are by far and away the two most popular attack types and have been for quite some time and are fairly universal in the game. And then the other ones, the 50% to stop as well as the 50% to charm, well, these are a little more niche, but 10% to Berserk I appreciate because there is no way to prevent Berserk in the game. And so the fact that, enemy King Mont might use Limit Break, the fact that she has a chance to maybe avoid it, I at least like. So we'll get into more of why she can kind of counter that limit break better than other characters can, which I think is really interesting. My general thoughts, she's incredibly potent magic DPS. So this is where my disappointment comes. When I first saw the kit and I saw Arithmetician, in my head I'm like, oh, like Halloween Leela. Like there's a perfect blend of like aggressiveness and healing and offensiveness, and even Yuna has that in her kit where she'll go ahead and she'll throw her limit break out there and then she'll have a holy, but then she'll heal up, and there's a great blend of offensive and healing, trade-offs. Black Rose Helena doesn't have that. Straight up, she has the Kilf AI here with Kilf on the White Mage sub job, where the only time she'll use any of the healer sub job abilities is if there's not an enemy in range and someone next to her needs help. So the fact that she's not a healer first or second, she's a DPS primarily, is actually really disappointing to me. I thought this was going to be like the dark equivalent of the Yuna, where all of a sudden now you can run mono dark against mono light and you got your own healer to compete with things. It's not the case. She's straight up a magic DPS. She will not heal the team, and I say that because we're going to see in a second here, almost all of her attacks have an incredible amount of range, which means there's almost always going to be an enemy in range, which means she's almost never going to heal your team. That being said, why is she a good DPS? She has an ability with 30 SPR down, which is effectively just like 30% extra damage for her and any magic users, 20% magic resistance penetration, so when you're going against these magic tanks, obviously she'll be able to chunk down their SPR and cut through some of the magic resistance. And then 38% dark apparel, which I love. I love any kind of element apparel because it makes your whole team better when you're running that mono comp, that all of them benefit from it, rather than just like a selfish ability where, something like 2B where she increases slash resistance penetration. Well, she benefits from it, but the team doesn't benefit from it. So I really like all of these because a lot of them do things for the team. Great attack utility, has both 100% guaranteed hit in her kit and an AoE barrier break, which is awesome because a lot of the barrier breaks in the game are on physical units, which require a lot of AP to get up to. But since she's a mage, she gets a ton of AP to start, which means she can barrier break really easily early on. The Arithmetician job does have loads of AoE versatility just as it pertains to single unit or AoE or height or level, and then heals and damage. I have heals here, but that's really more for the manual play than it is the auto play. The speedy, high magic potent character, we're going to see the stat in a second. She can very easily get into the 400 to 1400 magic range without a ton of the handicaps that even Yuna might have in terms of gearing. And then finally, solid innate resist, as we mentioned, with the 15 and 20% slash magic resist. So This high-end sample build, this is kind of like, we'll call it the whale build, if you will, like if you're maxing everything and kind of playing things to the best. I have her here with her own TMR, which I love for the 5 agility, also for the ability that we're going to see in a second, it's a barrier for 3 times and increases her agility. This is her own Black Rose card, which increases her agility, and then the Bahamut Esper, which is super potent offensively, as well as for healing, which she doesn't do, when it boosts your magic up that high. So, that being said, when you do build this, and I have Dwayne and Garvel here as a mono comp because they give some mastery sharing with the HP and modifiers, and I have Garvel using Trousseau just for now and Omega here on Dwayne. Long story short, she ends up at 7,200 HP, which is a lot of HP, 1,400 magic, which is really awesome. Her magic stat is high all the time, which I think is great. Agility of 101, absolutely crazy, stupid fast. SPR of 22 on top of the 40% magic resist, and other than that, I didn't build for any of the resist, but obviously you can play around building different things. I just wanted to throw out some stats here. And then in terms of the other things, she's got about an extra 125% on the modifier, or 1.25, and then the resists are overall, like we mentioned earlier, but the thing I like here, she also has the negative 200 casting time and a 40 magic resistance penetration, which this magic resistance penetration is super important for chunking down those magic tanks that might come your way. In terms of the other stats, so evasion, she's not an evade unit, only 2% higher than the average, and she does have good luck and good agility. It's just not to the extremes that you see in an evade unit. And the accuracy, she's actually very accurate, and I say that because she does have a ton of dexterity here, 246 on the average of 201, but the thing that I like in particular, a lot of these characters that are above her, I have this sorted by accuracy with passives. And so yes, when people put on their passives and whatnot, they can get really high, but if you look at the total innate accuracy without the passives, she's at 158. Well, 158 is amongst some of the higher, like at least top 5, top 10, so even without any passives, she is relatively accurate, which I like. And then if she's running the Black Rose Vision card, it gives 25 accuracy to the party as well, so, you know, add 25 to this, and she's going to hit a lot of things even without the guaranteed hit. And then she has 6 SPR. That's actually kind of important. We'll see in a second here. So when you get into the class and job overview, this is the passive abilities. Really not that many. There's not a lot of versatility here with how you might gear her based on the passives. Witch's Dark Mastery is almost a must, and it's not a bad thing because the SPR penalty of 8 isn't so bad because she has 6. So yes, it takes her down to -2, but you can get that back pretty quickly. But the decrease of activation time is really important here. 200 obviously will help cast things quicker, in addition to being able to maybe outplay some of the casting times of enemy units, which is really important. Providence of Light, this is great for a magic meta if it comes where she's already decently strong against magic, makes her more strong against magic. And then height 3, height 2, and level 4, level 3, totally subjective depending on what you're going to be running for your arithmetician job and what the map offers. In terms of counter abilities, all 3 of these honestly have their place. Counter Energy is great for the increase of AP if you're expecting a more, longer drawn out battle, or you want to keep blasting some of those high AP things, but it's not great. It's okay. Magic Guard, I'm a big fan of just because if you're in a magic meta, obviously that helps her survivability. And the damage distribution, I actually like this one a lot as well because the absorption of HP I think is super important considering that she doesn't heal. So if you're not running a healer, a dedicated healer, she's going to need to regen some health somehow just to stay in the fight longer. So I have her on damage distribution myself. I think it's good. In terms of the main job though, this is a great main job, I'll be honest. So Devastation is probably one of my favorite abilities just because it's an AoE barrier break with a fuck ton of range here. Darken Focus is good for the decrease in activation time where that gets her up to 550. That's basically half casting time, a little bit more than that. So super important just for being able to blast some of these spells more quickly. The Witch's Hex in particular is the ability I'm thinking of where decrease SPR by 30. This is a mid-range ability, but it's a giant AoE. Decrease AP of 20 for targets, so that's good for, you know, people that are not using bells. It's essentially going to make them not be able to use some of their abilities. And then the decrease of SPR of 30 for 3 turns to targets. That's a lot for a giant AoE. That's again extra, basically 30% damage for her and any other magic users are using. And then finally, the 100% hit chance, pretty straightforward ability. It's got good range, basically her equivalent of Holy. The sub-job, it's not a bad sub-job, I just don't think you're using it much. Dark 2 is probably the only ability I'd really use here where it's a double hit. So hypothetically, if you're running a mono Dark comp, you can maybe get some elemental chains easier that way, but outside of that, not a lot to offer. The Spellblade sub-job, kind of the same idea here, where I'm really only using the resist magic ability, and that's only in the case of a magic meta, where obviously trying to bulk up her magic resist, but other than that, you're not going to want her to be anywhere close to the enemy using some of these 1 or 2 hit square abilities, so just leave them out. And then finally, the Arithmetician sub-job. So this was one of the ones I was most excited for initially, but it turns out she really only prioritizes the attacks. So the level 4 or level 3 Darkra or the height-based Dark. These other ones, They're a little more niche. Disable ones she won't use because it doesn't do damage. By and large, any ability in the game that doesn't have damage tied to it will not get prioritized over others. So things like CT average, height disable. We've seen that with some of like the gunner like stun abilities or sleep abilities. So overall, she's really just spamming the Darkra and the dark ability here, which is fine. I'm just disappointed it's not more Cure and Cura. I really thought that was going to be a thing. So it's still a good job because it does obviously give some insta abilities and can have some versatility depending on the map you're using, but I'd probably use this all the time on her, quite frankly. And then finally, in terms of the limit break, one of my favorites recently, the Dark Resistance Apparel is hugely important considering it's a massive AoE. It is really expensive, but she's got the AP to do it. And then 200%, pretty average for limit break, but that's still a lot of damage to be done on an AoE scale considering how high her magic damage is. So this is great because it's also beneficial to the other Dark members in the party. And then the TMR, I love this TMR. So an accessory of anything with 5 agility, I'm a fan of, just being able to throw some extra speed on there in addition to the actual ability itself, where you can get up to 25% for 3 turns. I love the barrier. Any barriers in this game I'm a huge fan of because it's becoming harder and harder to gear resistances for everything in a material way. So the barrier does a really good job of just, hedging against all damage types, which is super valuable. And then finally the master ability, pretty basic for the HP and dark attack, but increased magic, resist penetration of 20, super important for overall output, and then increase of magic of 10%. Every little bit helps. So other than that, vision card synergies, I'm not a strong believer in any of these except maybe Black Rose in the battlefield, and I say that just because it is a great card for dark units with the accuracy. The agility obviously makes her super speedy on both the unit and party effects. Same thing for the party, they're going to love it. And then accuracy of 9 in addition to the accuracy that she's getting from the party buff here. So overall, I think it's a great card just to make sure she hits everything in sight. And then the Shadow Flare ability, she doesn't use it very often as far as I've seen. She will still prioritize her abilities, but the fact that it's decreased AoE resist on a mid-range ability, on a large AoE, she's got a ton of AoE, so this is obviously going to help her a lot for the damage output. But we have seen more AoE resistance in the game recently, just with Brigantine and Rain X's upgrade, and King Mont has AoE resist, Yuna has AoE resist. So there's a lot of that in the game. This is a good way to kind of like chip away at some of that power creep that we've seen on that resistance type. In terms of the other ones, these are really standard, like nothing creative here. Ramuh, Trousseau, Solidus, Blossom in the Dark, all of these have beneficial things to magic users, so pretty standard lineup. And then in terms of the Espers, kind of the same thing here. I don't have a strong preference at all. Really, really subjective to what you're running, but I think Bahamut is the absolute clear number one, considering that he doesn't have any elemental strengths or weaknesses. He's got a ton of versatility on the board for either offensive output, boosting your magic, magic resistance. It's got a great agility. Overall, amazing stats. The other ones are still really good, but just more niche to the damage types, whether it's Slash, Pierce, Strike. Aegon also has magic resist, so you can play with some, but Bahamut's kind of the clear number one favorite. And Cactuar, too, I have it listed here because he is a good awakened Esper at 3 stars, so definitely viable. And then weapon optimization, this one actually does some decent value. To me, Cypress Pile is probably the best, if only because, yes, it's like the second highest magic in the game. The magic resist penetration of 20, but I think the underratedly best thing about this staff is the 25% chance to confusion on basic attack. The reason why I say that, with the King Mont meta coming and a lot of the strategy being to use AoE Berserk, if he does happen to get her in it, even though she has 10% resistance to it, the confusion on basic attack will help because mages will basic attack when they're berserk. So if she can suddenly confuse the enemy King Mont, that's going to be a DPS loss, or the same thing if she confuses a healer, that's a healing loss, or you get the idea. But I really like that. They didn't have to add this on here, but I like it a lot. I think it adds some counterplay to getting berserk if that happens. Prunus Lamina is probably the worst of these 4 in my opinion. It's not bad. It's pretty average. It's got good magic, and she does get the modifier of 15, but she doesn't get this light lighting modifier of 20. Magistral Rod, I think, is basically a better version of the Prunus Lamina because it does have higher magic. Technically has a critical build, which the Prunus doesn't, so you theoretically could do more damage, boosting her critical rate, but also the evocation boost, and it still gets a same modifier of 15. And then finally, a little niche, but I like, in the case of a magic meta, the Inga Staff, which is Shell's TMR. The reason why I like this, although it's not the highest stats in the game, the modifier isn't that much less. It's only 10 versus the 15 that you're seeing on some of these others, or, yeah, these two in the middle. But the SPR penetration, really important, where obviously she has an SPR break, but in the instance that you do come into a magic meta and people are like really chunking up their SPRs, 15% penetration on that is really important in addition to the break and the magic resistance penetration. So I think this is a really good staff, underratedly so. It's just going to be niche to whether you're anticipating a lot of magic tanks. So overall, all 4 of these rods, the Platinum Rod, unfortunately, I think is power crept at this time. If you have it, use it, but I definitely think these four are better. And that's it in a nutshell. So hopefully, appreciate bearing with me here. But I'm glad I waited on this review because the fact that she's not a healer in the capacity that I thought she was going to be completely changes my opinion of her, how she fits into the cast of characters, what her staying power is, why her staying power is so. And so overall, it's an okay character. I like that they added another magic user to the Dark cast because they did only have Garvel up to this point. But I just wish there was more healers in the game. I really do because I played the top end of the game. My guild is ranked 7th overall as of this morning in all of global. So there is like harsh metas that we encounter in terms of PvE play. So the lack of healers overall, it's really just Yuna, Ayaka X, like kinda, but a little more situational. But frankly, Halloween Leela and Eldyra have been power crept to nothing. They really don't do their jobs reliably as healers anymore. So the fact that Helena isn't the healer that I thought she was going to be to essentially balance the light meta that we're going to see, considering Warrior of Light X is also coming out, is actually a really disappointing thing to me, and I think it kind of hurts the versatility that I thought she was going to have. So, long story short, I'm sorry to put a damper on things like that, but if you pulled her, have fun with her. I'm enjoying using her. It's just not what I expected, and obviously, if you have any stories or responses or tips or any feedback, feel free to leave them in the comments, and I'll talk to y'all soon.